Already in progress.
Well, it is a little after 7, so I would call this meeting to order. Can you have a roll call?
Yes, Supervisor Galloway, Supervisor Pruitt. Here. Supervisor O'Brien. Here. Supervisor Hodge.
Present.
Supervisor Gillespie.
Here.
Mr. Higgins.
Here.
Supervisor Barlow. Supervisor Woodward. Here. Supervisor Reed. Supervisor Rutherford. Councilor Fleischer.
Here.
Chair Payne.
Here.
You have quorum.
And is there anybody participating electronically tonight? Okay. Matters from the public. Is there anyone either online or in person who would like to speak? If anyone would like to speak, you can have comments of up to 2 minutes. Seeing nobody, I will close public comment. And do we have any comments provided via email, online, or website? All right, well, we can move on to our first item of the staff introduction of the Director of Regional Planning and Operations, Kate White. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate White. I started July 1 as the Director of Regional Planning and Operations. I support and manage the housing, the community development, the environment side. Right now, I'm doing a lot of receiving now. I'm trying to absorb as much as I can, as quickly as I can. I'm originally from West Michigan. I went to University of Michigan. I started my career as a planning consultant and did a lot of transit-oriented design and comprehensive planning. That's great. And yeah, so I've been in Charlottesville for a few years. I'm really happy to have found this opportunity and really look forward to just kind of taking my experience and adding value here. So I look forward to meeting you all and working with you all. Thanks.
We're very glad to have you with us and look forward to working with you over the years to come.
Yes.
Item B, the special recognition.
Yep, before we do that, if we can go ahead and introduce Supervisor Hodge.
Yes,
He's our
okay.
new Fluvanna County Commissioner that is taking Mr. Smith's spot. Just like to welcome you here. If we can do a quick round of introductions, just name and locality, just so we can put names with faces, I'd appreciate that, and then we'll jump into the special recognition.
You just go around, sorry.
I'm James Higgins. I'm the Greene County Volunteer Representative, and this is my 3rd year on the commission. Name Louisa. Know you.
Ned Albemarle.
I know you.
Michael Payne, Charlottesville City Council. We're glad to have you here.
But we.
Jen Reicher, Charlottesville.
Right, I mean.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Then we'll go to drink and board of supervisors.
Mike Brewer, Albemarle, Board of Supervisors.
Big Blunt, TJPDC staff.
There goes the TJPDC, guys in the back, but go down the line, that gate.
Hi, I'm Isabella O'Brien.
Nope. Oh, I'm more James for Louisa, I'm for her.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I would like to say, things gonna be for the last. I'm excited.
Great.
Okay, now for special recognition, can I ask you, Keith, to come join me up front? I have a couple of prepared comments. I did make bullets, so I wouldn't forget to say anything. But I am pleased to share that Keith Smith was selected to receive the Robert Baker Achievement Award from the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions. And so Robert Baker is he was a retired Army before he joined regional planning down in Brunswick area. He then started the Southside PDC. He then helped to start the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions and served as their first president. He was very well renowned for his commitment to regionalism, his commitment to cooperation within regions, and upon his death, they actually created this award to honor him. I nominated you for this. I was very pleased to see that the nominating committee agreed that you were well deserving of this award for your commitment to TJPDC, for your commitment to regionalism, for your tireless efforts on our behalf. You've served on a lot of our boards. You've been a great mentor of mine, and I appreciate everything you've done.
You're gonna make me tear up.
You take off that?
You come with the count.
Does it come with a check? No check. No check. I did, this is awesome. Everybody in this room knows me, somewhat well. For me to be speechless, take something. This is unbelievable. I really don't know what to say. Other than this has been an absolute pleasure. I was reluctant to come back for this, but I was told to come back. I wasn't sure exactly what was gonna go on. I was like, oh geez, maybe Tim decided not to do it.
Yeah.
I could come back again, all this kind of great stuff, but there was not a single commission meeting that I didn't love to sit in this seat and do this. Regionalism is extremely important, and what this body has become in the last 15 years that I've been part of it is nothing short of miraculous. Thank you. In my last meeting, I gave kudos to David here, but also to Christine, and this is pretty awesome. I still think I should come with a check, but anyway. Thank you very much. You guys get on to me.
Yeah, I would echo that and talked in the past about, the impact I've seen from your housing advocacy, and I just know you talked about, being on this commission after the 2008 financial crisis when it wasn't certain whether this commission would continue, and being around through multiple leadership changes here, so certainly well.
It's been an absolute pleasure working with her. Thank you. I'm just speechless. So that's how you shut them up. Thank you, guys.
Well, if there are no other comments, we can move on to the next agenda item, the remote participation and virtual meeting policy.
Okay, the remote electronic meeting policy serves two purposes. The first is to allow for commissioners to participate electronically when there is an in-person meeting, and the means by which to do that, but also includes the ability to hold all virtual meetings and the rules associated with that. There are no changes from last year's policy to this year's. A draft copy was in your packet, and if there's no questions, staff recommends a motion to adopt the remote electronic meeting participation and all virtual meeting policy as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, or should we do a roll call, or it's all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Does the code just require an annual recertification?
Yes.
That's
Readoption. Yep.
this.
Well, update. The next item, appointments for next meeting. The Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership, TJPDC member, as well as the TJPDC Corporation Fluvanna member.
Okay, so it's informational for today so that we can begin to have some conversations prior to next month's meeting where we'll need to take action. This is the membership of the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership. It's a 25-member board made up of the 4 different pillars: private sector, public sector, nonprofit sector, and citizen or citizen representatives. Keith Smith was serving on line 17 as the TJPDC appointed commissioner to this board. As you can see in 1 through 6, many of our other commissioners are also serving appointed by their governing bodies. So this commission will need to, in its next meeting, determine who they would like to appoint to the TJPDC commission role. So I'm sure we can have some conversations about who has the capacity to do that. This board meets quarterly to discuss housing. Don't need to make a decision today. And then the next one, this is the roster for the board roster for the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Corporation. You guys received a presentation on this from Ruth before she left. It is the 501c3 nonprofit arm of the commission. The bylaws of this board require that at least 7 members are acting 6 directors will be selected from the TJPDC commission to represent each member locality. At least 4 of them have to be current commissioners. So you can see on the left, right now, current commissioners, we do have Pruitt, Goolsby, Woodward, and Reed. We do need to fill the vacancy for Fluvanna County. So that can either be a current sitting commissioner, although since we have the minimum threshold of 4, it does not have to be. It can also be an appointment that this board makes to a Fluvanna County rep that is someone other than this. So just to put some thought into that before the next meeting, we'll have to come forth. May reach out to a couple of you offline to have some discussions to see if there's anybody willing or recommendations that you have, and then it'll come before you next month as a vote.
It is a very low. I was saying.
The corporation.
Yes.
Yeah, the corporation used to meet annually, once a year, just for their annual meeting, filing their 990s. More recently, it has become either every 6 months, and it may move to quarterly depending on the amount of activity and the number of nonprofits that seek for us to be fiscal sponsors, but it is usually 2 to 3 meetings a year, the corporation.
And you touched on a little bit just now for the newer commissioner, what is the role and purpose of this again?
The TJPC Corporation is the nonprofit arm that mission is to serve the mission of the TJPDC through nonprofit fiscal sponsorships and or activities that the commission is not eligible for. So for example, the corporation can apply for grants that are only eligible to nonprofits that can help with implementation of projects that are within the TJPDC's mission and set of activities. It also serves primarily to be fiscal sponsors for new or emerging organizations that are looking for a little bit of infrastructure support with their finances, making sure we have 990s, helping them to get directors and officers insurance, helping them to get off the ground with the hope that they would then seek their own 501c3 nonprofit status.
Thank you. So I guess at this point for either seat, are there any commissioners who would like to volunteer or have an interest in either role at this point? Not, no.
Maybe we'll just have a conversation next week on that.
Yeah.
All right.
For either role, being both the RHP executive and the.
Yes.
I'll broach it if that doesn't. I think we had been expecting to try and have a replacement for the off-going Albemarle rep from the RHP executive that was also going to be an Albemarle rep. I'm someone who professionally works in housing, and from an angle that we don't currently have on the board. And Ned had suggested, and I gladly accepted joining the RHP executive board. But so I would formally throw my hat in the ring if this.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Pruitt.
Nice and clarifying question. Is that for the vacant seat number 2, which is the appointment by Albemarle County for their seat, or is that for the TJPDC commission seat, or would you like us to make a recommendation to the executive committee and the board of the RHP that he serves in both? Because right now he would be taking the Albemarle seat. He was in the TJPDC appointed.
Blew my mind.
Sorry.
So
Does that make
Albemarle
sense?
has internally voted to fill that extra Albemarle County seat. So I'm there representing Cardiff currently, right? The separate seat we internally voted, I thought that would have already been transmitted, that Supervisor Sally Duncan was going to be
Thank
joining
you.
there.
That's what she just provided me.
Yes. And so I think the motion here is, my understanding is there's not a restriction on what seat the members will be regularly coming from. And I happen to be a Albemarle County elected, and there's a value in having we got that perspective there.
Yes, I
Maybe
brought
I go
that up
for-
at the executive committee meeting
Yes,
in
yes.
April. I brought it for March or May or whenever the last executive committee meeting was. I also brought it up in the quarterly meeting in June, and there were no objections to that from the RHP. That's your mind? You were at the audience, you were at the. So the idea was that Mike could go serve on the executive committee from the full partnership, satisfying the elected role. Not really mattering where he's coming from since he's already there with Carla. Just as in the past, Diantha used to be my substitute for Albemarle, or because she was also the transit part of the rep, so she was attending anyway. She would actually sub in for me if I missed an executive.
So just to clarify, that is for the executive committee seat, but not the full partnerships TJPDC member seat.
Right.
For that full partnership TJPDC seat, is there anyone at this point who's interested, or again, we can?
I guess that bring in the question.
That's okay. I think I just conflated a bunch of things too. So between the two of us, we just made three different things and my apologies.
Well, no worries. It sounds like, but it sounds like for that TJPDC seat, we can just wait till next meeting to figure it out.
Yeah.
All right.
I apologize for getting us on a different business track, because I was.
You're good. There's still clarity.
Yeah.
I would draw my nomination. You can't be there, I can't.
Sorry about that.
It just, not to complicate it further, but as the outgoing chair, the executive committee has approved for me to be included in a immediate past chair capacity, but not taking up a voting seat on the executive committee or the partnership. So I'm still gonna be involved with the committee. So I wouldn't want to take up the opportunity for another commissioner to join, since I'll already be participating in, if that makes sense. So I would love to, I'd encourage folks that are interested in housing to be that TJPDC rep. But that's the reason I'm not popping up for it, because I already get to kind of hop around there anyway.
I'd be interested in it. We're still talking about it.
Yeah.
I think we are.
I think we are.
We'll bring that forth in the next meeting for action.
Definitely. I know Jen's been extremely involved on homelessness and a other things, and would be a huge asset for the regional housing partnership. So, all right. Well, it sounds like we'll finalize those next meeting. And to move on to presentations, the regional housing study update.
I'm gonna be at a drink. See you later, guys. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Have fun.
Flash that around.
Oh, I need. Okay, and then I'll share it with you. Oh. Sorry. All right, thank you guys for your patience. Hopefully this will continue to get everyone excited about housing. Good evening, commissioners. I am here to present to you an update about the regional housing study. We are a year and a quarter into a 2-year process. So I'm mostly going to just share with you all a little bit about what we have been doing so far, and then give a little bit of a taste of where we are headed next. So part of why we are doing it is because we need helpful data to help us make decisions as a region and for the localities as well around housing. The last time that we had a regional housing study was 2019, so a lot has happened since then, so we want updated data. We also have engaged Virginia Center for Housing Research to do a really in-depth study and look at the regional and all the locality markets to try to understand everything that's happening. And I'll share a little bit about how in-depth they've been going today. We are also partnering with Housing Forward Virginia, who is helping us with a coordinated strategy development process, which is this second part that we're heading into now, to look at a narrow set of regional and locality-based strategies to respond to what we've been finding in the needs assessment. So more on that in a second. So these are everyone who's involved that I just mentioned. So this was the entire development process that we mapped out at the beginning. Phase 1 is complete. So that's what I will be updating you all about today. So just a little bit about what we've been doing. So at the beginning, they started with a bunch of listening sessions, but they also started by providing a lot of training to folks in our region. We had 35 people participate. It involved
staff from each locality. It involved all sorts of people who are involved in housing from different angles, TJPDC staff as well, our HP members. And we learned a lot about a lot of different data sources and how to understand, how to interpret it, when to find that data is not going to really be effective because maybe it's in a part of our region where there aren't enough people, and then how to navigate what to do with that next, and come up with estimates and ranges so that the data is meaningful. So that was really helpful, and a lot of people joined us, which was excellent, a good outcome for our region. Like I said, we did a bunch of listening sessions. We've done 2 to 3 sessions with each locality in our region. We had elected officials, city and county staff and executives, and we both learned a lot, and it was pretty great because we had both our folks from VCHR and from Housing Forward Virginia in those listening sessions. So there was a lot of back and forth and providing information, even while receiving information as well. And what they did with the information that they received is incorporate it into their needs assessment, and into the strategy formation. They're giving us a menu of strategies to choose from based on what they've heard from us. And they used it to really understand the quantitative data that they're reviewing. That's one of the biggest uses. We completed 13 focus groups. It was a lot of different people. You have the list there. I won't read the list of all the different groups that we talked to. Their goal was really to understand what is happening with the market and kind of why the data is saying what it's saying from a more qualitative point of view. And it gave a lot of context that was incredibly helpful for everything we've done since then. VCHR has been working on lots of data analysis as well as a literature review for the past 6+ months. They have a whole team that's been working on it. And at this point, we've gotten to see the drafts of the technical reports, and it is extensive. Everyone who has read the few people who have read all of the drafts all the way through spent a lot of time reading it. And it's really meaty. It's got a lot of detail. It's really good information. So we're excited for that to keep getting tailored and usable for everybody. And at the same time, they've had their team working on literature reviews to kind of look at, well, what's happening nationally on issues that we asked them to look at. And then since then, they also came to our region a few different times to get stakeholder feedback on some of their initial data. They kind of basically presented graphs and charts and talked to us about what they were seeing in the data, and asked these groups in particular to just kind of have a response and let them know if anything was sort of questionable, that they should dig further into the data. I would say generally the responses we got in the feedback with the stakeholders were more in agreement and just kind of amazed and trying to think about how do we apply this as we move forward. So, which brings us to what is next. We are currently in the strategy development phase. So we've been working pretty closely with folks from each locality on thinking about the full range of options and where everybody is. All of you are familiar that each of our localities in our region are working on lots of different things related to housing. And so they're really trying to tailor it specifically to actually what is happening in real time. And so that's been a whole big part of the process, because a lot is happening right now with housing in every single part of our region. And there will also be regional strategies as well that try to incorporate all of it together. And so we'll be working with the teams who are narrowing down those strategies to be the best fit. We'll really only select a few. We only want 1 to 3 strategies per locality, and then 1 to 3 strategies for the region. Our team that's working with us on this has worked with a lot of different regions, and they're really encouraging us to recognize that we can't do everything. And if we try to do everything, it's probably not going to go well. And so that's kind of hard, I think, for a lot of folks in our region to accept, because of course we want to address all of the issues, but they're trying to encourage us to really be strategic about our strategies and focus on what is feasible, and then plan to continue to build from there, as a lot of our region has already been doing so far. And then in the end, you will have a really long technical report that will have everything in it. So if you want to read the full thing or go use it for a specific piece of data, it will be there. But we will also have consumer reports, which are a shorter version that's kind of for the lay person so that everyone in our region can have a digestible way of understanding the main points as well. So we'll be working on that, as well as finishing the strategies portion in the coming months. And then in March 2027, we will have those final versions of all of those different reports available to everyone. And then comes implementation. This is one of those reports that has a plan included in it. So implementation is the next step. It doesn't just land as a study and just sit there. And I'll just throw in a plug. We will then be having the Regional Housing Summit in April of 2027. So you'll also get to hear from our team at that summit about the outcomes. So any questions?
Well, Bill, you said there was a list of issues provided for the literature review.
Yes, and
That there somewhere?
this is the briefer version, but yes, I can give you the full version.
They go fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, I know the summit last year was great, so. Forward for that.
Wonderful. Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit, but I know one of the guiding goals for this was for it to be able to be implemented and also for it to be able to be kind of a living needs assessment where new data can be kind of plugged in and updated over time. Could you speak a little bit about some of that, what that will look like?
Yeah. The living piece, I mean, it won't be a living document, but definitely the idea of the trainings is that now we have these 35 people with enhanced skills so that as we come back in a year later, 2 years later, if we have things that we want to go find that data and know how to work with it, we do have people who are more prepared to do that. I feel like I missed the first part of the question. Did I fully answer it?
Just some of what it would look like for it to be like implemented and
To be implemented. Okay, thank you. Yes, so once we have finalized the strategies that everyone is choosing, Jonathan from Housing Forward Virginia is going to be responsible for fleshing that out with us as well. So actually the final version will have a more detailed plan in it about how those things will be implemented. And so based on that, there's going to probably be, just from having my finger on the pulse of it, it's going to be a range of strategies. So I think the implementation for each one is going to look pretty different from the next. So, but that's why we're working really closely with staff as well in all the localities. And we're trying to really think about who is implementing what so that there can be a sense of knowing how that will move forward. But yeah, that'll all get nailed down in the next few months as well.
Is there a timeline for implementation?
No, I imagine that will be part of what gets fleshed out. But I mean, I think we've kind of talked loosely about the goal being that it could start within like a year of the plan coming out and be implemented sometime in those new years. A lot of the strategies, I think people are imagining that they would also be long-term strategies. So maybe the implementation starts in those, but it's not supposed to be every strategy that we will use for the next 10 years. It's not a super long-term idea. It's what can we do now is kind of the idea. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely very excited to read it, and I hope for us in Charlottesville, maybe it can help reinvigorate us to focus on anti-displacement strategies and financing side of affordable housing and some of the tools we haven't prioritized quite as much in recent years. So
Thank you.
well, if there are not any other comments or questions, we can move on to the next item, the draft solid waste management plan.
There we go. Oh. Is it PDF? It is PDF. Am I turning something up? Mouse, you can do it. Maybe. It's taking a second. That's fun. That was rude. You can also just share it. This time doesn't work. There we go.
It said invalid credentials. Yeah, so I think something's wrong. Yes. Sorry about that. Alrighty, well, hi there. I'm a regional planner too at the TJPDC, and we'll be talking about the solid waste management plan update today. And we'll highlight what we've learned throughout the planning process and review our draft goals and next steps towards adoption. Maybe I started prematurely, I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Apologies. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so our solid waste planning unit looks a little bit different than the boundaries of the TJPDC. So here you can see it includes Albemarle, the City of Charlottesville, Fluvanna, and Greene County. And TJPDC staff coordinates the activities that the state requires of our solid waste planning unit on behalf of these localities. Next slide. So we have two primary responsibilities as the planning unit. The first is the annual recycling rate report to DEQ. And then the second is to maintain our regional solid waste management plan. And state regulations require that these plans are updated on a 5-year basis. So our next update is due October of this year.
Sorry, I don't know why it's not showing the top part. Full screen. I'll try that. There we go.
That's it. Sorry.
You just carry on and I'll just keep getting in your way. See if I can actually just minimize it and get it out of the way. There we go.
No problem at all. Okay, so next slide. This planning process is guided by the waste management hierarchy defined by EPA and as required by the state. So this prioritizes reducing waste or reusing it first, followed by recycling and composting, with the last priority being disposal options like waste to energy and landfilling. Next slide. The state establishes a number of additional plan requirements, so the update must evaluate our current conditions, the capacity of our local facilities, future waste management needs based on that, and our population projections, our public outreach efforts, and implementation strategies for the next 20 years, because it's the 20-year planning timeline. Next slide. It also requires an assessment of waste generation and disposal trends, our recycling report and performance based on those annual reports, and then how we plan to maintain the state's minimum required 25% recycling rate, and then an adoption before submission to DEQ. Next slide. So the reported recycling rate is used by DEQ to determine whether the region meets the required target. For our region, based on our population, this is 25%. And so we coordinate this effort by compiling information from local governments, public facilities, regional partners, and then participating private entities. Next slide, please. Virginia calculates this recycling rate by comparing documented recyclable materials to documented municipal solid waste disposed, with a few credits available for certain qualifying activities. But one challenge with this is that some waste streams are excluded from the calculation, and private haulers are encouraged but not required anywhere in the region to report recycling information based on state code. So as a result, the recycling rate more so reflects documented activity rather than all of the recycling and waste disposal that's actually occurring within the region. And this was one of the key takeaways, that the recycling rate is more primarily a regulatory compliance metrics, and it helps us to identify trends over time, but it's not really telling the whole story. Next slide, please. So the good news is that the region consistently does exceed Virginia's required minimum recycling rate. So the data includes 2021 through 2024 with our regional rate ranging from 34 to 41%. And differences between local recycling rates often reflect differences in reporting systems as much as actual behavior. So for example, in Fluvanna County, some of the highest recycling rates in our region, but most of the reported data comes from a public convenience center in Fork Union, and many residents, particularly in newer residential developments, are using private haulers that aren't reporting any of that data. So it's likely underestimating the totals, which you'll see more in the next slide. And then Greene's facing a different issue. While data are available from the county from their transfer station, reporting is incomplete from some private haulers and a major private metal recycler, which is a big amount of the weight for recycling. So in addition, the facility receives material from outside of the county, which can affect and kind of skew the figures. So in the next slide, this chart more displays the relationship between the rate and then the recycling tonnage. So Fluvanna is in the middle there. They have a high rate, but it's a very small amount of tonnage that's actually being reported. And then Albemarle and Charlottesville are reported collectively just because Rivanna Authorities serves both areas and they provide a lot of this data. We also get data from the city's private hauler, information from partner organizations like UVA, ACSA, and private reuse stores like Goodwill. So it's a lot more rounded out, and you can see it's more of the waste data within our region. Next slide. Per capita disposal provides another example of these reporting challenges. So the regional average increased from approximately 3.4 pounds of waste per person per day to 4.2 pounds in 2024, which does remain below the national average reported by EPA as of 2018. However, the county level figures you can see are varying very dramatically, with Greene reporting roughly 11 to 12 pounds of person per day, and with Fluvanna at less than 1 pound per person per day. So these differences likely reflect where waste is being disposed, as previously mentioned, rather than individual household behavior, highlighting the need for better data collection and transparency. So yes, we're meeting the state requirement, but the reported rates should be viewed more as indicators of documented activity. Next slide, please. So because that informs the plan, I wanted to give that context, but plan development began in late 2024, and it included our data collection. We've had 5 technical advisory committee meetings with local staff and stakeholders. There was a public survey available over the fall, a public workshop. We developed implementation actions with local staff. And there's been multiple opportunities for public review, including this month's public comment period and the upcoming public hearing at the next TJPDC meeting, which is required by state code. Next slide. So for the public survey, we received 257 responses from residents across the planning unit. The key data was that overall, we're satisfied with waste collection services, but satisfaction declined considerably for respondents when they were asked about recycling and composting. And the greatest survey gap from these respondents was on access to convenient composting opportunities. Next slide. Several regional themes also emerged from the survey based on comments. Residents recommended clearer information about what can be recycled, better transparency related to what happens to recycled materials after collection, expanded composting opportunities, more convenient facilities in the more rural areas, and broader access to curbside recycling and composting service. And improving trust, transparency, and accessibility were recurring themes throughout all of the engagement. So I just wanted to do a quick look at some of the key details from each locality, but I won't spend too much time here. Charlottesville respondents had identified key challenges with recycling access for multifamily housing, offices, and restaurants. And they noted some limited composting opportunities and had kind of pushed for curbside composting. That was recommended multiple times. And then additional desire for electronics and hazardous waste and bulky item disposal throughout the year. And in Fluvanna, residents emphasized, oh, got order. Okay. Fluvanna residents emphasize the desire for more affordable and accessible drop-off centers for residents, a local composting program, and clear information about what's actually being recycled. And then Albemarle. Yeah.
But your Albemarle slide, one respondent mentioned Black Bear and Panorama.
Those are two local composting facilities. So they're privately owned. Yes. Yeah. So people will drop them off, and there's a few drop-off centers that the city has as well, like at the farmers markets. Things like this.
Bear and Panorama are located here in the city.
In Albemarle.
In Albemarle. Are they restricted solely to Albemarle residents?
No, city too.
I'm just learning that there is part of that,
Yeah, Blackbird does, I have Blackbird compost with my home, and you can, they pick up once every other week. And then you can, Panorama's composting also does delivery to home, and you can get the compost for growing delivered once a season.
So people can bring material to be composted and while they're there, pick up.
I don't even go anywhere, it comes to the house.
Yes, they will do pickup of compost.
That's impressive.
Thanks for your question. And then in Albemarle, the sentiment about some location gaps, specifically in Crozet and Whitehall, were recommended. Again, multifamily housing challenges, more opportunities for composting, and then additional disposal for hard to dispose of items. And then lastly, for Greene, residents had expressed strong support for expanding recycling options in the county and at the county facility, particularly for glass and plastics. And they also raised concerns about disposal costs and recommended more convenient facility hours. So next slide. The goal of the public workshop was to review the key findings from our background data analysis, and then hear the feedback on our draft regional goals, and then hear their feedback on potential local specific strategies to meet those goals. And the attendance was modest, it was virtual, but the comments they aligned a lot with the feedback that we had received in the survey. And there was another note to have more measurable specific objectives for each locality. All right, next slide. So the drafted regional goals are organized around 3 main focus areas based on the feedback from local staff and members of the Technical Advisory Committee. So the first is data and information sharing, which includes improving public education and developing better methods for collecting, verifying, and sharing waste and recycling data. The second is planning, with a focus on maintaining an accessible waste management system while encouraging source reduction and reuse. And then the third is focused in waste diversion, which also includes improving diversion measurement, supporting circular economy initiatives, and expanding equitable access to waste reduction and recycling opportunities. And these are very similar to what was included in the last plan with some minor tweaks. And the next slide. The draft plan includes all of the required elements that I discussed earlier. I really just wanted to point out here that the appendices include all of our public engagement materials, including all of the survey responses, if you're curious to take a look there. Once adopted, the resolutions, and it also includes a technical report that was developed by master's students at the UVA School of Public Policy for their thesis project that focused on rural solutions to waste diversion, specifically catered to our rural localities. And then the more detailed implementation plan is also included in the appendices. And these include locality-specific actions for each goal. Next slide. So compared to the 2021 plan, this includes an expanded recycling and disposal analysis, discussion of the reporting limitations, a more locally defined implementation framework, and then a significantly expanded public engagement section and description. And the plan is currently available for public review. Sorry, next slide, actually.
Oh, sorry.
through the end of August on the TJPDC website with all of the supporting appendices. And we will be presenting the plan in more detail to each member jurisdiction throughout August and September. And then the state required public hearing will be held at the September 3rd commission meeting. And then following that, it will go to the boards again for resolution of adoption. And will return to the commission for the final adoption by the Solid Waste Planning Unit in October before being submitted to the EQ. That is all. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Question, with the data goal, so it was talking about the two goals, one of them being accessibility, but it seems like one of the goals should be to have a standardized method of elections.
The method that we follow is determined by DEQ. And they require, us to collect this data, but only public facilities are required to share the data. The code says that private facilities should. And so I know there's conversation in some localities about having hauler requirements, as part of an ordinance where they're permitting with specific haulers to ensure that they're gathering this data. But as part of the process that DEQ requires of the Solid Waste Planning Unit, we're kind of limited, by what the code enforces.
So will we always have to have that disclaimer that Greene does it this way and Charlottesville does it that way? But I don't understand how we're ever gonna get that discrepancy reconciled.
Yeah, and I think that was the point of having these more locally specific actions. So we've stated that the regional goal is to improve transparency of the data, have a better baseline of the data so that we can move, towards improving it. And then the localities specific actions is kind of up to them to coordinate with private haulers that are working within their localities to set up agreements,
Sure, other than that, we had a metal recycler apply for an SUP, and part of the SUP condition was that they had a report. Was what we put in place for that, just, talking a little bit about the challenges here from that standpoint, so we do that, which I think is a good way of doing, just making people report. It will go a long way. I am a little surprised about Fluvanna's reporting in the sense that, half of the county is not a recycling plant, so I'm surprised that the numbers show that we are not participating as much as.
By a recycling plan, do you mean working with private haulers?
Well, right, but I would, the one private hauler that serves a lake, serving 4,500, 5,000 homes, which is about half the population. And, they do have a separate recycling bins. Do you think that we would be able to get some pretty good information about that?
Yeah, unfortunately we don't. And that information isn't captured by RSWA because they have a private transfer station in Zions. So that's just missing,
And since that's a contract homeowners association, trying to get the county to apply pressure, I suppose, on homeowners association to ask them to report. And is that the way you look at it from that standpoint?
I think it's really up to the locality. There's hauler requirements that can be put into place as part of ordinances so that in order to have a permit within this jurisdiction, you have to report the data on a quarterly, annual, you can define that within that, which I know Albemarle County, their Solid Waste Alternatives Advisory Committee has been developing recommendations for that for, I think, 10 years or so. And they've had private consultants work to develop that ordinance. So I think that's public material that might be referenceable. But also I know that a lot of times private haulers have to get a permit from their locality. And so as part of the permitting process, without having to update the ordinance, that might be another avenue to, communicate better about requiring data reporting. So it's the locality specific actions. We've talked about all of this stuff, and I think it's up to the local governments to determine what the best approach is,
By localities, you would think it's both on the permitting and on the ordinance side. So it'd be a real big hot button where you have a lot of people coming out to complain about getting this stuff. Is it the fear that it's going to drive costs up? I don't know. I'm looking at it saying, why would this be complicated for localities to do this, it's lack of awareness.
I think that might be a part of the problem. Yeah. And also I know, the climate conversation can be very big, and transportation, is it's a bigger part of, our greenhouse gas emissions. And so I know a lot of our jurisdictions are more focused on that end, but also, solid waste is there. It's just, it has less greenhouse gas emission, but it touches people's day-to-day lives, a lot more closely.
Feels like a weird place for the state to have injected a requirement. Like, and I don't want to diminish the value of the good work they've done, but it's a regional planning effort for something that has to be administered locally, and even the local governments have actually pretty diminished capacity and levers to use to influence the problem. It's a mostly privately delivered, at least in this community, it's a mostly privately delivered thing with enterprise, right? There's not even a role for them. Private citizen to or citizen to HOA.
I mean, it sounds like, and what I understood, if I got it wrong, but both between the permitting process and the ordinance process, sounds like could have, fairly aggressive role by the counties in requiring, reporting. Would help standardize it and help understand the problem better from that standpoint. Again, I don't know, because that leads to that whole question about, I was struck by the percentage of people who are concerned about transparency at 93%. That's pretty, or was that 93 respondents? I don't know if that was.
No, there's 257 respondents.
For 250, so it's a 93% response that said, don't trust, the information that's being provided, right? So that's, or 93 you mentioned. So out of 250, so it's not a percentage. So out of that, that's 35%, 40% roughly, because they're saying we are not really sure that what we're doing is of any value. But I think, the news, you hear things like how much of the plastic actually gets recycled, what's happening from that standpoint. And if you hear about China rejecting, the waste management, the waste that we're sending, so a lot of folks are essentially saying, well, why am I doing this to begin with?
Yeah, and it's the point you brought up is interesting because there's this recycling report that's based on solely municipal solid waste. It doesn't include construction debris, which can be estimated to be up to 50% of what's being thrown away. But so there's this report that DEQ requires, and then there's a separate report that's not within the confines of this plan, but it's called the Solid Waste Infrastructure Assessment, and DEQ gets data reported from every permitted facility because they have to get permits with DEQ, not the localities. And if you take a close look at that data, for municipal solid waste, for all permitted facilities in Virginia, the recycling rate, depending on how you look at it, is between 1% and 4%. And so there's a big discrepancy between what they're reporting from the SWIA report and then the recycling rate report, which they have a different, scope of what they include. But I think it does point to there's a lot of missing data, and if we want to be meaningfully planning for the future, we should probably understand the baseline.
Well, I think we kind of aligned some of that conversation for the upcoming presentations to localities. Is the goal for when this is finalized and adopted that localities respond to it with local policy changes that connect to the concerns that come up through the development of the plan, or is it really primarily just about tracking that data for DEQ requirements?
There is an implementation plan. So I would encourage you to take a look at Charlottesville specific actions, because it's defined by local staff.
And for us in Charlottesville, is our climate staff or other relevant staff been part of this process so far?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you. The next item is the consent agenda. Unless there are any amendments, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. On to new business, FY 26 quarter 4 financial report.
I'm just going to pull it up to have on the screen, but you can just. Copy of this was provided in the packet. I'm going to put it up just as she walks through it, but don't expect that you can read it up on the screen.
Good evening, everybody. In the consent agenda was the May and June financial reports. So if you're looking for kind of our year to date where we ended for the fiscal year, those P&Ls will have those totals as well. Just wanted to make reference to that in case you're looking at where did we land for the year. But these reports will also give a snapshot, but I will be focusing in on how we did in the fourth quarter specifically for the fiscal year. The first thing I did was just compare how we did from last quarter to this quarter. We had an increase of 15,000 in our net quick assets. We had a, sorry, I was up there. 10.19 months of available operating expenses based on the 12-month average, which was an increase slightly over the March number. Our current goal is 8 months of available operating, so we're slightly ahead of that goal. And then our capital reserve funds were 382 at the end of the June. Unrestricted cash on hand as of June 30th was 1.3, so that equates to 7.89 months of average operating expenses, and 6 months is our goal. So again, slightly ahead there. If we're less than 2, that's when we have a concern that we're not going to have funding, and we are well above that, so no concerns there. Revenue less expenses would equate to, on a normal P&L, a net gain or loss. And so we had 11,000 for the month of June, specifically. Cumulatively for the fiscal year, I'm giving you that number, which is 112,887. I'll just look at the chart right below that and just reference that one line item for a moment. That's a little above where we had targeted. We had a budget of 110, we're at 112, so a $2,400 gain over what we had looked at as a budget in March of 2026. So I'll skip down to that table there, just looking at the revenue, operating expenses, and pass-through as well. This table shows what we budgeted from the March approved operating budget to what was actual through June, percentage of what was spent or earned, and the dollar variance. So the revenue and the pass-through pretty much equate to each other around what was anticipated and what actually occurred. Most of that, I would say, was contributed to the body program. As you are all aware, that's a multi-million-dollar program, so getting it down to the exact dollars are kind of difficult. But that's where we landed for those. Operating expenses were slightly below what we had projected, and that is primarily a result of 2 staff vacancies, both occurring on March 31st. So the whole fourth quarter, there were 2 positions that were not filled. Then we switched to the balance sheet items. This kind of just summarizes what our current assets were, whether there were increases or decreases from this time last year. These are summaries of the balance sheet that was included for the quarter as well. in the attached reports. I'm not sure if we have that up or not. But again, accrued revenues. I'll just skip to that because most of the assets and the liabilities are pretty evident in the report here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to address them. And then accrued revenues with the existing grants and contracts, we had a rollover, and that's shown in the accrued revenue report, which was in the packet, the consent agenda packet, right? So 20 million, excuse me, 515 were our rolled over contract amounts that go into fiscal year 27. I think I said that correctly. And then operating expenses for June were 168,142, which was actually a decrease of 32,000 from the March operating expenses, which were reported in the third quarter. Anything else I can say? I think that's. And just a little caveat, these numbers are not all final. There's going to be some year-end adjustments that are going to be looked at, and then the audit will be in August, September, October time period. And I'll come back to you with any final figures then for the year. That's my presentation. Any questions?
There are no comments or questions. I know this item is STAR. Does this require a vote? Entertain a motion.
I move we accept the financial report as presented.
Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. On to our next item of new business, the Rural Health Transformation Staff Memo Resolution of Support.
All right, that will be me. Yes, you do have a memo and a company resolution in your packets. You should get back that I think in the memo about the origins of the Rural Health Transformation Program coming out of the federal legislation that was approved last summer. There was part of the compromise was to funnel some money to rural health efforts in the states. So for the first year, Virginia's take is almost $190 million. Last fall, the previous state administration started the application process. Of course, we have changed administrations, and now the new administration is administering this program. About 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, the individuals in charge of that program, the state level, the governor's office, reached out to the APDC and looking to PDC's registered to be partners with the state to help them administer one of the buckets of this program. There are 4 buckets in this program. The largest one, the largest funded one, to the tune of almost $64 million, is called Connected to Care Closer to Home. And it's focused on mobile and hybrid rural health care delivery. So I think mobile clinics and telehealth, et cetera, et cetera. The money that's flowing from the feds is coming to DMAS, which is Department of Medical Assistance Services. They do Medicaid. They don't really do grants. So therefore, the state has really been looking to try to find implementation partners for these initiatives. This is the last initiative, this bucket that doesn't have implementation partners. So we're trying to bring them up the rear in a discussion with the state about this. The conversations that we had over the last 6 months or 6 weeks or so, seems like 6 months. There's been about 8 to 10 planning district commissions in different parts of the state that have been part of those conversations, which is about the number that the state came into this thinking that they would need. Looking for those PDCs to administer the grant funding, to look what applicants should be awarded funding for rural health projects. The state has divided up Virginia into 6 regions. You got Southwest, you got South Side, you got a Roanoke Valley, you got a Northern, or a Shenandoah Valley. You got a Northern Piedmont, which, is, planning districts 10 and 9, so us and Rappahannock, Rapidan to our north. And, then you've got another one that is, kind of the Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, and Eastern Shore area. So, nothing in Northern Virginia, nothing in Hampton Roads, nothing in the Richmond area. And ironically, and some people took issue with this, nothing in the Lynchburg area. That was deemed to not be rural, according to the government folks. So we get a little bit of pushback on that. But really what they're looking for the PDCs to do is to really just to funnel the funds. Solicit applications, judge the applications, make awards, you look at the, getting the money out to the projects, monitoring the projects. I think it'll be a good paperwork since this is a federal program, and then making sure that the project's really compliant to, the rules of the program. There, I know Christina's talked about it, just, conversations that she's had with folks, about a lot of interest in this area that has already been demonstrated in the state as part of the application process last fall. The state had set up a suggestion box, and just in this this bucket alone, for mobile and telehealth and hybrid healthcare, they had over 80 suggestions from across the state just in a very short period of time. So we're anticipating it's going to be something that it's going to be very well. I guess there'd be a lot of interest in. So the funding for the this first round would have to be obligated by October. So we're looking at 2-month plus period of time in order to for the PDC to get an agreement with the state, and then funding that would be awarded to projects would have to be spent by September 2027, so another year. I guess about 3 weeks ago, we kind of had a curveball thrown at us where we state had been working on this October deadline for getting under contract for this bucket, and the feds came back and said, "Oh no! In order to show that you're making progress towards implementing this, we need you to have somebody under contract by the end of July." So fortunately, there were a couple of PDCs that stepped up, one in which particular was able to negotiate much of last week with the state to get under contract for their particular region. I imagine that arrangement is likely going to change, so can't really say exactly what the structure of this might look like for additional PDCs that may be contracting with the state. Again, I don't think it's going to be a problem for this money that is in this bucket to be spent. It sounds like from what we're hearing from this one PDC, good bit of bureaucracy, good bit of paperwork. I think there's still some questions about how funding, in terms of administrative costs might flow. But, I think the conversation by the PDCs that have been involved in discussions with the state, everybody, despite risk, sees that there'd be great benefit to being able to be part of this program. So the resolution that is before you, it kind of outlines some of what's in the memo and some of the things that I've said, but would essentially just authorize Christine as executive director, should it be in the best interest of TJPDC, to enter into a contract with the state for this region.
No, there would be discretion remaining if additional curveballs are thrown.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's final until a contract is signed, so.
And I'd want significant legal review on the agreement.
Yeah.
Like I want everything to be in order. I just want to have the opening to not lose this funding for our region. Is what it comes down to, is if we don't agree to do this, it's unclear who the partner would be, if not the PDC.
They've been going to with some of the other buckets, they've gone there's some other state agencies, Department of Health, Department of Rehabilitative Services that have been involved, in other places it's nonprofits like Foundation for Healthy Youth. It just it kind of depends on what the initiative is and who could be a good implementation partner. And that you know, I think they were struggling to figure out this particular bucket, in landfill with PDCs, and I think quite frankly, I think they were surprised at, you know, the receptiveness that the PDCs, you know, in these early discussions are having, you know, to being partnering in this program.
Any questions or comments from commissioners?
David, a 10% indirect cost recovery rate seems to me a little meager. Is this the norm for these kinds of federal projects?
I would say not only is it meager, it's 10% administrative across both the PDCs and the state's administration of the program.
So essentially $6 million.
It is a significant grant for an insignificant amount of administrative fees associated with it.
Well, I'll rely on your judgment that whatever you get will be enough compensation for it. Sounds like it could be a pretty heavy paperwork.
Paperwork and compliance.
Compliance.
This sounds nuts, can I just be frank? This sounds totally bananas. Just saying, this, I don't know, like, just to have have a PDC have to be the fiscal sponsor essentially of these things in like a realm of healthcare that is already so robust and tethered to bureaucracy beyond, with no administrative support or technical support, although I didn't read deeply into the memo, I would.
Yeah, one of the things I didn't mention is that they did indicate that there would be state level project managers who would be, you know, there to assist, you know, at the regional level. For example, there was a question raised in one of our discussions about, you know, would it be the PDCs who, you know, are going to be soliciting applications and then you having to review proposals and then make awards. And they said yes, but you know, if you want to have someone from the state be part of that team that's reviewing those applications, that they can do that.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, I think it would be weird to not say yes to the potential of maybe doing this, right? That's aside, but I could see some applicants for community paramedicine applying, but would that really count as mobile? Are they really clarifying that? We wouldn't have that expertise here, so that you're saying that project manager would kind of come in and say, okay, this meets the eligibility requirements. Okay.
Yeah. The way that I'm trying to think of this optimistically is similar to body, where we don't have any of the technical expertise. We are not practitioners. We are serving as a pass-through organization where we're taking the money from the state and we are relying on partners to apply for projects that are eligible so that we can then say, yes, we can get you the funding to do that. It is fast and furious. I am pleased to hear you say you're concerned about the administrative costs, but it is also a one-year commitment right now with uncertainty on what the next several years might look like, because this is only year one of the program.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
I would say there's even uncertainty on the part of the state being able to get future rounds of funding. I think that, you know, part of the reason that this obligation, or this contract had to be put in place on a quicker time frame was so that they were showing progress by a checkpoint that they didn't know existed, that would better position them, you know, to be eligible for future cost funding.
Thank you. Sorry about interrupting.
No, it's understood. In all of the meetings I've been in, I've been pretty impressed with the other PDC director saying, we will figure this out because we have to figure this out. But there is still some lack of clarity that we're going to learn as we go. I mean, it's only been a handful of weeks since we even learned about this. And it's going to be really quick to get to the point of under agreement with legal review. The more information that I get, I think the more information I can bring back to you, hopefully in the September meeting as things progress. But I did want the resolution that I can continue to move, continue to work towards this. If an agreement needs to be signed before your next commission meeting, that I have the authority to do that. But I'm happy to give you all the information I have as I get it. It's just moving very quickly.
I know the Lake Monticello Rescue Squad is a nonprofit and they're interested in community paramedicine program. I'm a member of it. So that might be an opportunity there to start a program that could benefit the community and leverage, you know, money to make the program happen.
I think the reason the PDCs were reached out to is because of the existing relationships that they have in their region, you know, working across you know, the local jurisdictional boundaries and working not just in the government sector, but the private sector. But likewise, I think, you know, there may be opportunities for, you know, partnering up, you know, among different groups, you know, and submitting applications as well.
Can I ask how kind of populating in my mind, you set up the event. And now I'm trying to put everyone in their respective roles. And the analogy with Bob, right? And saying, oh, here we can just be a fiscal agent, and we'll rely on partners. In that case, though, you also, like, I'm looking from perspective of the county, we had a clearinghouse, a convener, is the authority that actually helped bring together the recipients and coordinate a lot of that work. And it's not clear to me who's going to fill that role in the analogy here, or if that's maybe an open question that you are still also discerning, or maybe I'm misunderstanding one of these two programs.
I'll take the first crack. I guess unlike Body, where you had, you know, involvement and investment by each of the individual jurisdictions contributing to the project, we obviously not have that piece. So I would envision that, you know, you may have, UVA putting, you know, something that they're working with some of the private sector and it may be outside the greater Charlottesville region. And that would be project. That would be directly.
I guess the distinction I'm making is, I appreciate, yeah, the locality brought in their own experts, but also like the authority that we stood up housed technical expertise, which was critical in actually vetting individual applicants. To the previous point of like, you don't have in-house expertise on rural health, is that who's making these decisions? And I guess I'm trying to figure out in this new program as an analogy, it feels like there still isn't that role for the veteran, the convener. And maybe there's not going to be one, or maybe we're still discerning who occupies that. Or again, maybe I'm talking out my butt and I don't know if like I'm misapprehending the program, but yeah.
Are you representing Jason Unified in broadband?
Yeah, and like in general,
Okay.
broadband offices, broadband
Yeah.
authority had other expertise from like technical. Like we have citizen appointees.
Yeah.
Expertise sometimes because works.
Well,
But also mainly not just.
but but that office really did convene and bolster and brought together all of the, you know, everyone put into that pot.
And like-
Regional. Yeah, exactly, and that did become a coalition that made our region the strongest applicant for being in other funding, so I forgot about that actually is a big part of our local region.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point because, you know, we wouldn't necessarily be able to say, is this project having, you know, if you have the role, you know, that state manager and state participating in that as well.
It sounds like an estimation of this program currently really hinges on a high estimation of the capacity of technical assistance. I don't know, I'm always underwhelmed by like regional technical assistance resources. You know, HUD has like a regional technical assistance office, right?
Yeah, and I don't think we have a good feel for who all would maybe be involved, because one of the last calls we were on, we had folks from the initiative in their office. We had someone from the Attorney General's office. We had folks from DMAS, and we had someone from the American Consulting from the problem as well. You know, again.
Sure, he's getting more than two. Oh, that's the state's piece. Sure.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
I would say in a situation like this, I would almost want to rely on support of a selection committee of folks that are in the industry, without there being the conflict of interest that they are also applicants. And that's gonna be really hard to pull together in.
And you're up.
It's hard. Plus, the data on telehealth and living in rural is crap. So, yeah, I don't know. This is very strange.
Well, the other option is you all direct me to say this is not something that the TJPDC wants to engage in. I mean, certainly I want to do everything that I can to bring this funding to our region. But if there is too much risk and too much uncertainty, I would take that direction from you.
You know, if the risk and uncertainty is something that we feel, it's gonna be across the board. So, you know.
You mean other people?
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah, so everything.
The whole program.
So
Right,
it
share
can be
those. That
created.
flag can be raised pretty high, yeah.
Right, so I'm saying it's not a unique problem to us, so we're not the powers to be to change that. That will come to the attention to people who create this program, they have to come back and say, "So we need to figure out how to do our job." So I don't know if the risk is right. I think
Also, people don't realize governments think they're not gonna do money.
You're right, but, you know, but I think the real question ultimately, what I'm getting to is it's kind of your decision, if you're comfortable with taking it on, you know, then tell us, if you're uncomfortable, then tell us, right, you know? But I don't know that this is gonna be the success or failure of this is a reflection on us, as we just put it, that standpoint. It's maybe systematic, I guess, but.
And the vote tonight is just about not 100% closing the door and giving you the discretion to explore doing this, right?
Yes, and if there were to be a requirement that an agreement or a contract is signed prior to your next commission meeting, that I have already sought that approval from you through this. But if it is not required before that commission meeting, I'll bring that back to you with more information that we learn in the next several weeks.
Will we count on, say, the executive committee?
Sure, we need to pull you in off of the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move we adopt the resolution of support for the rural health transformation staff member. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. On to the executive director's report.
Okay, the executive director's written report, is a little bit more comprehensive than normal since we did not have a meeting last month. So it includes 2 months of, work of our team, but I did want to highlight a handful of bullets that are in there. First and foremost, kudos to my team who put in, all the smart scale applications, both for the MPO and in support of the rural jurisdictions that asked for that. That is a very large lift. It is a very complex process. So thank you to my team for all that work. Those were all submitted and now in the state's hands. Second one is the TJPDC did kick off an update to the rural long range plan. We have been working through the rural technical advisory committee to update that plan. It's about a 10-year plan. We have been in contact with both your planning level staff, but also your chief administrative officers, letting you know that that planning effort is underway. And the ways in which that we will engage the governing bodies to approve the items that go forward in that rural plan. This is the very beginning of the kickoff. Effective July 1, we do have a new Commonwealth Transportation Board member for the Culpeper District. That's all of our jurisdictions except for Nelson County. They're in the Lynchburg District. So we now have a new member representing our region, Mr. Jim Moy of Mineral, Virginia, will take that seat. Passed around to some of you, I'm not sure everybody knew this, but for the MPO's application to the build grant for preliminary engineering on the Rivanna Bikehead Bridge, we did not receive that grant. This is the 4th year in a row that we have applied and the 4th year in a row that we did not receive the grant. We will take advantage of FHWA's debrief. In the last 3 debriefs, we learned that we had merit scoring. It's a highly competitive project. They continue to say resubmit the project. It is still yet to be successful, so there's a lot of conversations at the staff level of how many times do you put into the same pot and not have success versus how long do you stay in a queue when they tell you to keep applying. And if there are other projects that are eligible to be submitted and billed instead, whether through the MPO, through the TJPDC, or through the localities. But we have yet to find another funding source that is eligible for a project of that size, so.
Sounds like we're gonna have to battle harder to bust up with.
Call it something else.
But For that one, I mean, obviously that project would be transformative in a lot of ways, but is the assessment at this point, it's just a path that this is not possible, or is that still being like determined whether it needs to be either abandoned or significantly adjusted?
I think there's a lot of conversations right now at staff level of exactly that. Because what should our next steps be and what recommendations should we make for the future of continuing to apply for the same program and not finding success? Yeah. Another update is from our PATH mobility management program. We do apply annually to DRPT for funding. We were awarded additional funding this year, plus an additional $50,000 from the state to try to expand our transportation assistance fund, and that's to help older adults and people with disabilities trying to reach critical medical appointments. So we do have a transportation assistance fund to support folks that where there's no other transportation option available to them. We're continuing to look for other private and foundation sources to continue to support that fund because it has been a very useful product in this area. Staff are also evaluating a new planning opportunity through DEQ, much with Bell and Kate supports to support the development or update if it already exists for debris management plans in 3 of our 6 jurisdictions that were impacted by Hurricane Helene. There is some state funding to go in and look at the emergency operations plans that localities already have a requirement that there's debris management in there, and going in and reviewing what's in there and perhaps updating those plans on behalf of those or in tandem with those 3 jurisdictions. That is Albemarle, Greene, and Nelson. We are having conversations at the staff level right now to look at what the existing condition of those plans are, what is the interest, what kind of staff capacity do they have to support that. And then we will move that up to the leadership within your counties to get confirmation that you guys want to participate in that if we were to apply for a grant for that. You heard from Bella on the solid waste management plan. The executive director's report and her presentation had all of the dates of the upcoming meetings to governing boards, so she'll be before those 4 jurisdictions coming soon. The Rivanna River Basin Commission's annual conference is upcoming. That'll be held September 30th at the center at Belvedere. There are registration links within the executive director's packet that you can click on if you're interested in attending. And the theme for this one will be watershed stewardship and access. And then the notice of funding opportunity, we have been waiting very anxiously for the housing preservation grant, NOFO, to be released. The notice of funding opportunity, it's a grant we apply for annually. It is not a large amount of funds. It's $80,000, something like that. Usually they release the notice of funding opportunity. There's a 15-day public notice process, and the application is due within 30 days. And so we will bring that to you at the beginning of the September meeting to serve the intergovernmental review process, do a public hearing, and be able to apply for those funds by the end of the first week of September. And then other than that, other updates are written within the report.
Any questions or comments? If not, we can move on to roundtable discussion. We can begin over here with Albemarle County.
Outstanding. So we have a few things that have come before the county lately. I will go in the order of least interesting to most interesting. Like I think everyone else here, we entertained in the past the sales tax referendum to get on ballot. It ended up being unanimous. We also have just started our legislative primaries process. We have been interesting, a new experience since I've been on the board, even though I've been out for 3 years. It's the first time we've had a bunch of things come off the legislative primaries, but they got signed, which is cool. The main thing that is a key legislative priority in the county in the past that continues to be hung up is, you know, our expanded photo speed authorities. And that's because it seems like everyone kind of wants a hand on that ball. There's 1,000 different stakeholders, each with 1,000 different things they're trying to get done. There's not 1,000 people. There's a lot of people who are each trying and are individual voices. So it's all over. We are beginning the process for updating the housing Albemarle plan. This is our housing master plan. It requires a 5-year update. It also requires 5-year goals. We're in the happy position of having mostly accomplished our goals up to this point, which obviously means we need to project out on what we do next. With that, we're also preparing for the last thing, which is the formation of Housing Advisory Commission. We made some initial comments on what we'd like to see that look like and kind of how that, what role that would have. The desire would be something that can, I think, all boards and commissions, the ideal scenario, if they act like an extension of the board's brain, they engage with policies discreetly and intensely that we don't necessarily have the capacity in our meetings to do. They submit individual proposals and we lead those, and works the channelizing function. There's some discussion on whether or not they should have other roles, and of course there's discussion on composition, whether or not we would have reserved seats, whether or not it would be regional, expertise. We also got a update on our activity planning, our activity center planning. I mentioned that mainly because that's kind of a wonky and lead bit of our planning process, but it's relevant here because there was kind of 3 different broad activity center clusters that we were presented. They said we're going to focus on master plan on this. So we think we had the most players to actually play with. One that was second in line but didn't get selected was Dantops, the southern Dantops area. And the specific reason was there's not that many things that we think there's not quite enough things we can play on right now. 1 or 2 things slotting into movement would make this one of our higher priority plans. One of the examples of something that would make, and it's just because we were just talking about it, one of the examples of something that would make that elevated, priority for master planning would be, of course, if there was and so now those are the less interesting things. The really interesting thing we've dealt with for really the past 2 sessions, it came up really quickly, maybe embracingly quickly, is a discussion on concentrated animal feeding operations, confined factory farms that do meat farming. In this case, particularly around poultry, but we're talking about the issue broadly. This isn't a type of farming we have historically had in this area. It is a type of farming that is how most meat is farmed. Albemarle mostly is relatively small herds of beef cattle for farming and a variety of artisanal agribusiness and artisanal like agritourism. That's most of our farming, even though we're 95% of it. There is one large indoor feeding operation in the county that's been open for about 3 years, and it doesn't meet the middle of the neighbors don't like these things. That's been happening for a while. They've wanted some changes for a while. Not much is happening. Separately, there's been a really large land purchase in Albemarle County by a LLC that represents a bunch of minimum from Rockingham County, where there is a lot of industrialized agriculture. Not necessarily by these people, but they're farmers from there. There was concern in the community, and it looks like they may have thought about actually exploring different kinds of agriculture, including rural greenhouses. Not likely. There was concern in the community, oh no, we don't have any regulations on this type of agriculture because it didn't exist when we last acted. How we think about this. We're going to be caught unawares, and you're going to have like giant hog barns and turkey barns all over southern my district and premises district. A lot of community members got very exercised about this really quickly. And then there was a move to begin the process for drafting ordinance. Supervisor initiated processes for ordinance drafting, sometimes messy. Most of our processes are staff initiated, staff-led systems. And so this began with the request to staff to bring us a resolution of intent to initiate a process to get more information and to start studying the issue. And then that was, of course, going to be a vote we were going to have. And so there was I would say, a lot of opportunity for organizing around this on both sides of the issue. And I think it really, I think, Supervisor Galloway really put this well. He's like, people are trying to make this a bigger issue than it is. What is farming in Albemarle? But that kind of is the issue, and we never actually answered that. People sometimes critique our what I call, I think, more artisanal farms or agribusiness that we have that is lower impact as being fake farms or genuine farms. Okay, a real farm. What does that mean? Are we going to encourage agriculture? What does that mean? And these are just things that we fundamentally have. Because right now our rural area is mostly upscale residential and in some legacy farming uses. And I don't think we really engage with what farming looks like, whether or not it deserves additional regulatory approaches, and also like whether or not we're doing well to incentivize it. So we may be open to a very big plan, but that's the story of how we voted to start the process on examining
But you're A1, these activities would be by right.
They would, and you can't have them require a special use permit in Virginia by state code. You can still have criteria that overlays requirements. We don't have one specific system. You have one for agricultural buildings. Agricultural buildings have certain setbacks. Those are agnostic of whether they are.
I often use the example when we have, for lack of a better word, those who are opposed to any kind of development or industry coming into the area. I often say, you do realize we can have a pig farm up next to you, by right, you know, or they can paint their big barn purple if they wanted to, by right. And so they kind of, you know, to that point of kind of how Virginia and its land use encourages genuine farming, if you want to put it that way. I put it encourages saying that farming is to get the tax benefits, but I do like the idea that you know, if you're gonna put yourself out in the world, there should be real farming activities out there. Otherwise, you're not really rural. It's expensive land.
Lots of tax break farms. I don't know if you had any other follow-ups for Albemarle, or, you know, it was pretty thorough. I would just make the comment that I attended the National Association of Counties annual conference. The big overarching thing that seemed to be discussed a lot is data centers and how it's impacting locals. And we had the supervisor from Loudoun County, Mike Turner, sits on a steering committee up there. And a lot of other counties are looking to Virginia counties to help them figure out how to deal with all the issues the data centers can bring. So that was one topic. And the other one was maintaining local control. Luckily in Virginia, we're not having to deal with legislators, state legislatures pulling away counties' ability to collect real estate property taxes with their government. So could you imagine if you lost that funding mechanism? There are states that are doing that to counties in other parts of the country. I don't know how they function if they take that away. But those are two kind of topics that kind of swirled about just as a good the order of update.
Greene County. Greene County, of course, I read the hot topic in Greene County is the controversy between the federal ICE agent and the sheriff. I think that's been the hot topic for the last couple of months. You know, as far as business wise, we've got quite a few things that's popping up at this past Greene, small, you know, businesses there that would help. You know, we got the update on their water impoundment project. That's rolling along pretty good. I think that should be up and functioning hopefully within the next few years. It should be almost completed. It's the track that they're going. I think they run into a stalemate with the water treatment plant is drilling through rock. There's more rock than what they initiated doing. I think it's kind of got them in a little bit of lag on that. that's going along in some ways pretty good. I think we're entertaining that 1% sales tax for the school. I don't think we passed it yet, but I think we are entertaining looking at that. From that point there. Other than that, it's business as usual, a lot of things they need to like, yeah. That's where we are right now.
Anything else?
Very briefly, these recent rains are quite welcome in Greene County. Recently, the State Department of Health approved County Well number 2. That's expected to come online before year's end. Having 2 wells available to supply water to Greene's infrastructure is a very commendable development and a good way to assure that we can meet the water needs of these coming years.
Yeah, I know we're still in drought conditions in our region and hopefully change it. Fluvanna?
Fluvanna continues to be very excited about all the activity around the disaster project, the potential for data centers and valuing. And there is a great master plan out there to run Fluvanna back into a big data center. And so there's a lot of excitement. In fact, in our meeting last night, there was conversation that we want to outright ban data centers. Data centers by in industrial zoning, it used to be by but we put up special use permissions for that. So we'll be bringing that onto the agenda next time around, and we'll see if the supervisors decide whether that's a good idea or not. I always think it's a bad idea that saying something before we even know what it is, but we'll be talking about that as that's the excitement there. Part of that was driven by the fact that, and this was again, I find humorous because I'm always amazed that we have people on the board who kind of try to use property rights and information rights and so on. And so there's a lot of concern in the community because there's a realtor who has a listing. It was originally listed as a data center site attached to the VDP site, which was connected, of course, to our developer, because that's the person that you go if you like the VDP site. And to find out more information. And so, is Fluvanna 4 data centers or not? And point out the chair is 4 data centers. As he said, that's fine. We did pass the 1% referendum, so that's the voters in November. And then both Wawa and Amazon are sort of slated to be open hopefully before the end of the year. So that's exciting for us from that standpoint. We're going down week 15. You can see a lot of activity. You can see with the Amazon warehouse, which a lot of people think is a data center. It is near completion. The parking lot's done. The interior is done. The roof is waiting for the water. The sewer. Maybe a little bit later, but thinking about it, tracking down for something like that. So somebody said maybe we use straws, so we will have it. That's exciting for Fluvanna to see that too. And the last part is for those folks living around today. It's on South Boston Road right now. We have is widening with so. That has created some disruption. That's main really for a lot of residents coming to Charlottesville or Richmond, so they have to bypass to go down 52 or further down 15. So if you don't live inside the lake, it's problematic. If you live inside the lake, just kind of right up in the building will happen. Think the left hand and out of that lot there. So I'll leave the rest for my colleague.
No, my right on my colleague there was very thorough, so I have nothing to add.
Do y'all currently have any data centers like that?
No.
The one thing that you carry in your pocket.
Well, I mean, this was an important, I think, thing that we learned when we went through our ordinance process. We have like a dozen. There's one on West Main that we pass every day.
Baby days.
Yeah, I mean, but like those are data centers. Right, and that, I think is important for informing the conversation, yes.
And that question was brought up by one of the supervisors, was asking, well, how many data centers are they needing? And so it's good to know that it doesn't, and, part of what I brought up is, definition of a data center. Could be a 10,000 square foot building, it could be a 1,000,000 square foot building. You have to evaluate that process and just outright say that was incredibly unfriendly message to folks that are looking to invest into for that for economic purposes.
I find it ironic that people that make the most noise and oppose it use social media and other platforms that require data centers to run. It's just crazy. It's like saying, I'm against forest fires, but I like lighting them. It's
And it did make me wonder, I'd be curious to see a comparison strictly on the water use questions, which is, I know there's many other questions as well. The comparison of water usage and data centers versus industrial farming.
I'm really glad you brought that up because, I didn't even think about the comparison. So Tabasco, in their original permit, had, the wiggle room to either draw water from the beginning or not draw water. The application to do there is moving into a regulatory air cleaning process. And there was a lot of discussion when we were passing this around the noise. And we have a pretty strict noise standard of 60 dBA, 1 hour maximum period of time. You can see that certainly cooling fans could add to the noise level. And so it was made pretty clear to the folks at Tabasco that you're going to do this, you got to make sure you stay within it. And of course, that was a conversation with folks against Tabasco in terms of what the county is going to do and how they're trying to protect from that standpoint, which are fair questions to ask. But it was also sort of ironic that, those same folks were saying, well, what about all the water that you're going to use? So instead of using 6 million gallons, they're going to use 1 million gallons. So you can't win either way. And that's just goes back to that. We're just against it. So that's interesting. And then, of course, as we know, in the data center, the BYOE, renewable energy, is going to become sort of the de facto model going forward. Chesterfield's going to be a great example of that, where you have the Google data center right beside it. It's intended to be the first fission power plant. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out from that standpoint.
Well, I'm sure it will continue to remain a controversial and difficult issue. I'm still scared of AI generated videos myself. At any rate, Charlottesville.
Also 1%. We are also working on our legislative items and agenda. We are doing a big push to close the 2 largest encampments for unhoused residents in our river district. And that is tethered to an emergency shelter opening on one of the properties we bought last year, which is called 2000 Holiday Drive. It's just off 250. It's a 27,000 square foot building, which we will convert by September 1st into about 120 bed low barrier shelter. Everything is in motion right now, so you'll hear more about eligibility for that shelter and programming and the likes, but all of that kind of in these last 5 weeks of kind of getting towards September 1 and getting the river encampments residents prepared and packed and moved, and then cleaning that area, which will continue past September. And then the goal is to build out a kind of homeless services division of our local government and continue to expand these efforts with the transitional housing, which we just got a $7 million state grant from with the help of Creeds to spend on that kind of effort, which is a technical HUD designation for housing. So we'll keep working on that and hopefully continue the efforts we're doing now with other encampments around the city and the urban ring to bring folks into kind of a ladder of homeless services as they expand. And then end of September is the Loop de Ville. So hope you'll come join us for the 3, 10, or 20, whole 20-mile loop of trails around. You choose your own adventure there. It's totally free. It's the only day of the year that we do it guided. So there are slow, medium, fast hiking, running, and riding options. And all of our guides are pretty well versed on the trail, and it all convenes at the end with a big party at the Fluvanna River Company down in the River District, and super fun day. So Sunday, September 27th, it celebrates Public Lands Day. So come.
It's the best opportunity you've ever had to actually complete the whole trail because of the level of like on trails.
Yes, and then you get a sticker that says, "I close the loop." Very excited. Highly incentivized.
So is the thinking that whole camping on there? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Loop de Ville would have run with whatever state the encampment was in. It does pass through there. But the encampment will be, the cleaning should be finished by the end of September, depending on flood season and how much, delay there is. But
That's everybody. Again, I know that.
you can stay ambitious, Tony. It's ambitious.
Yeah. I appreciate the efforts of Charlottesville and should press homelessness, which of course comes from counties that don't really have services and have residents that are you are now servicing. So I'll say thank you for that. After what you guys put forward, that's plans. It's very commendable. And it's created lots of problems. Challenges for you. So.
Yeah. It is an interesting breakdown. We have done an assessment of, we reached about 38 residents, well now 40, we did 2 more, in those 2 encampments, and about 40% are from Charlottesville, about 20% are from Louisa, and 18% from Fluvanna, and then other localities in Virginia take a big percentage as well as through the state. So yeah, there's everyone from everywhere down there right now. So
Is the survey data public yet?
no, but we're scrubbing it now, and I hope we'll start moving our efforts into getting folks prepared to move. And as we do that, so in the next 2 weeks, I hope to make that public.
I've been very anxious.
Oh, yes, I'll make sure.
When you scrub it, you can make 18% without loses.
Okay, yeah.
And then that data is for Zero Waste High Free Bridge of people who were there after the announcement of the closure date, correct?
Yeah, that is data captured between June 20th and today. So the announcement was made maybe 2 weeks prior to that. Yeah.
Right. Very important data, just,
We don't have baseline data.
right. We don't have baseline data, and we don't know how many people dispersed to other areas, and if that subpopulation differs in any way from those who chose to stay.
If they have support structures in Charlottesville, if they're from Charlottesville, maybe there's a.
Yeah.
It could, all kinds of things. Anything?
No, you did.
I would add on, like every other localities, we passed the 1 cent sales tax referendum. We're gonna be having upcoming meetings with our school board about some of their priorities for how they would like to see that revenue spent. Would add on to homelessness is definitely the biggest topic of conversation in Charlottesville. Beyond the closure of the encampment with the date of September 1st being the goal, and identifying and funding an operator to open Holiday Drive as an emergency shelter in September. Beyond those things, which have really been by far the biggest breakthroughs, in November, that's still the slated date for Vista 29 to open, which is 80 units for people to be able to move out of homelessness into those units, which has been a very strong partnership between Albemarle County and Charlottesville, as well as nonprofits to get that done. As was touched on in the encampment data, the majority of people are not from Charlottesville specifically in terms of your last address. And I believe in data from Pachymgas, which is our churches doing fall, winter, overnight shelters. match that as well. The majority of people that are not from Charlottesville, they're local in the sense of coming from, again, our surrounding counties, not much out of state or from, Virginia Beach, but very much a regional challenge. And I think part of it is not just our services here, it's also if you're homeless without a car, you're probably eventually going to migrate to Charlottesville because you can just walk to things in the hospital. A lot of people will use hospital as primary care, or if they have a medical emergency, they'll be up there. But I definitely think big breakthrough for us to be able to get Holiday Drive open, and something, I just kind of very vaguely thought about is it is a regional problem, and even, when folks from surrounding counties end up here, it impacts every county because people will often end up going back to counties at some point. Many have children who will be in school systems in surrounding counties, will impact every locality's foster care system, social services system. So as we, build out this center for homelessness services, I do think it's an opportunity for it to be a regional center, and perhaps there's some way for this body to facilitate conversations or about what that could look like to have it be a real regional collaboration. Because again, I do think it's something that beyond even just a moral commitment from other counties, I think there's a direct, practical financial benefit to surrounding localities to be a partner on this initiative in the years ahead. So I think we can have some of those conversations over the next several months and years. And the only other thing in terms of thinking regionally, was a next era, and that's right, attempting to purchase Dominion to create the largest energy utility in the country. There is now an opportunity for localities to submit both feedback as well as their position on the merger period. And that ends on September 11th, I think, is the date by which localities need to formally submit any concerns or positions they have. I imagine localities may have their own thoughts on what their concerns may be, or if they're fully opposed to it or support it. But if there are localities who have concerns or who are opposed, I think to the extent that we can join together as a regional voice, if there are shared concerns, will make it much more likely localities will be able to be heard as part of this process. And I think my biggest concern is over time, how will it impact what ratepayers and households need to pay, as well as increasing costs for localities over time as well, I think is a risk. So again, September 11th as a deadline, if any of your localities have been yourselves or your constituents have been hearing concerns about that proposed merger. But that is it. Louisa.
I'll start out our July meeting. We only had one meeting in July, which is unusual, but on the agenda was the 1% school facility tax. It was on the published agenda before our meeting started, or as our meeting started. We removed that from the agenda, so Louisa will not be having anything with that. Which, I mean, it's nothing new that Louisa does different than most everybody else. But anyway, that was our pleasure. So we got quite a bit of feedback from our citizens who told us that they didn't want impact. So that's where we are on that. That won't happen in Louisa for this year coming up. The other thing that we accomplished this past Monday night, that we've been working on for at least 2 years, is warming shelters. It's been a real struggle to get something together to try and not be overbearing. And in Louisa County, we're talking about churches, and the churches housing people, mainly during the summer, but mainly during the winter, but also sometimes in the summer food shelter there as well. And it's probably 8 churches in the county that have shown real interest and have run these in the past on a small scale.
We require a CDD if a church wants to have a school in their facility. And we just thought it was the right thing to do. For, we had, similar, response from some neighbors of churches that were doing this, who said that they wanted some protections, with it. I'll tell you what really kind of turned the tide. The Louisa Homeless Coalition, runs these for the churches. It's not a real large organization, has some really good people that are involved in it. They came up last year, I believe it was, and trained on the basic, you know, which what is it? Trained under them, brought back their regulations and everything. So they were able to show those to us. So really, up until the item was coming up on the agenda Monday night, we thought we had a really good, well, then some things had come up that day that we thought, so we took a recess in the meeting, and a couple of guys went back, and that was the only coalition, a couple of the churches, and they got the final thing hammered out. So we're calling a call out. So if they stay 7 days, if the maximum is 3 people per night, there's no conditional use permit required. And the way they've worked it the last couple of years, one church will have it for them, and then it will switch next week. So that 7 days winds up being probably 2 to 3 months for the time period. I think right now it's a good plan. I'm sure there's some things that we might need to do. But so those won't be a conditional use permit. More than that, if the one church wants to do it all the time, they'll still have to do a conditional use permit. But I think it was a really good conference. I mean, really that worked out. And as I said, I'm sure it's not perfect. We can, I think, work it out the meetings that we find. So I thought it worked out well. Personally, the amazing thing for me that happened there was apparently, on 29, I guess, had a news thing on about it. And Chairman Greene reached out to me and said, we have a lot of experience in this stuff. We need help. We need advice, any suggestions. I'm more than willing to talk. That would happen if 2 of us were on this. You know, I mean, so anyway, yeah, that's awesome. And I really appreciate that. And I've shared that with him, but that's so awesome that you did that. Monday night, I also said, in the meeting, there was supervisor time, that I thought that it was time that Louisa County had conversation with City of Charlottesville about this situation. And I think I'll whistle one right now. We're going to continue to work on it and see if we can't come back. Nothing may come out of that if we do, but something may come out of it too. You know, I think we need that. So, yeah.
But I think as many conversations as we can have regionally are vital, and again, who knows what may initially come from it, but we have to start somewhere. And then again, Albemarle is already doing a close partner with us in District 29, which has been very successful. And if there are any individuals or localities who are interested in it, I also strongly encourage them to connect with Jen, who has been on the ground over the past few weeks at the encampment, and has been deeply involved in figuring out how to get Holiday Drive actually open as a shelter. So she's had a lot of, you can tell me maybe too much on the ground experience.
And I think that 20% of the folks that are still in that encampment of Louisa County, I think pretty much willing to bet you that nobody in Louisa County, nobody at the board supervisor in the county level knows that situation. I'm sorry to take that back, because I think that just shows even more we continuously hear from the Resource Council and even the homeless coalition people, 8 to 12 people in Louisa County are homeless. But, if Louisa citizens are going other places to be in the homeless population, that makes a difference because it's a good possibility that they'll wind up paying back. So.
Yeah, we have to at any time present that once it all gets filled out and any way that it's easy to.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions about the absolutes, I'll be more than happy to share whatever I have.
Well, the only reason Louisa turned down that 1% is because they're basically printing money and they don't,
Well, not quite yet. We're hoping.
What's that, a lot of money that you're ready for that? That's $28 million?
How much?
28 million.
Well, if it all gets built out like we think, it's going to be way over 100.
Oh, well, I'm sorry, what you currently have right now.
Oh, no, it's because it's only one operating right now.
Okay.
But we are getting, this is, I think, an amazing thing that most of us didn't think of. The Amazon buildings, which everyone's being built now, about between $400,000 and $500,000 just for the permitting, the permits, all that stuff. Well, that's all got to stay in the community development department by the June statute. And so we've had to do all kinds of stuff, and that department's getting, I think, most of the on the wheels name. And they'll use them for a year, then they'll go out, it's just having to be creative and what to do. Now that will eventually end, probably in the next 8 to 10 years. But it's pretty nice.
So for the next 8 years, every police cruiser that Louisa gets is gonna be a community development police cruiser.
Yeah, well, those types of things are the exceptions, emergency stuff and all that. Yeah.
Louisa has a real estate tax rate, we have a lot more people to move in.
Well, we're working on that too. So it's, but no, and I'll just suggest this, keep your ears open to Edge Corps, who's the ones who bought the property at Shenandoah, the 700 acres. They're starting to come out with some stuff. And there's no doubt in my mind that the wave of the future of data centers in the United States is they're going to have to get away from using massive amounts of water. And they have ways to do that now. Some of Spotsylvania County and Caroline County, where Amazon's building data centers on a couple of campuses over there, they're actually going to use the effluent from Spotsylvania County's wastewater treatment plant, which is, 2.5 million gallons or 3 million gallons of water a day on average. So they're going to use that. Well, I mean, that's an awesome way to use that. But where you don't have that capability, like in Louisa County, we treat maybe 400,000, 500,000 gallons a day. It's really not worth running a return line and stuff back to it. But doing something about the water and also providing your own electricity that's the only way they're going to be able to move forward that I see. And I don't know, did you go to the big, we had 3 people from the county down in New Orleans, and I think all 3 of them went to the synagogue.
I sit on a different committee from where a lot of that is at, so I did not get on the data center.
But I think, that was a huge amount of attendance there because it's all over the country. It's not, and we can't just turn the heads away from that, or we can, but you're also turning the heads away from one of the huge ways of getting income. So it also takes land. Loudon is just such a good example, I don't think anymore, because they're just building them all, just stuffing them anywhere they can. I don't think that's
Well, I think Loudon started in 2003, so from a huge outlier for how far they thought about it. But I know we're over time, so unless there's anything else, I will.
I agree.